Hello, and welcome to Appleton Engaged. I'm your host, Timber Smith, Special Assistant to the Mayor for Community, Culture, and Belonging.
And I'm Andy, and I'm the Communications Director for the city.
And Appleton Engaged is a podcast that explores the many people, organizations, and resources that make our community a great place to live, work, and play. So whether you're a longtime resident or just getting to know Appleton, join us as we learn more about our community together.
Today, we are in conversation with the leader of an organization that has been a cornerstone of safety and support in our community for over years.
Oh, facts. Big time. Definitely what I would consider one of our community's most important resources that we have here. So we're super excited about this conversation and even more excited about this week's guest. So this week's guest is Tracy Plamann, Executive Director of Harbor House. Hey, Tracy, how's it going?
It's going good.
It's going good. Well, thank you for coming here on Appleton Engaged.
Thank you for having me.
As you will learn throughout this episode, what excites Andy and I about this is it is podcast day. And we truly enjoy podcast day. But before we jump in too far, let us start with, can you please share a little something about yourself and your association with Appleton and the surrounding Fox Cities region?
Well, I have been in at least the Fox Cities, I would say, since I was probably 16-ish. I'm from about 30 miles north of here, and my parents moved here when I was a freshman in high school.
So you've been around for a minute.
Well, I'm old, so yes, I've been as a lot of years.
Hey, I wasn't going to touch the age thing at all. Don't be trying to get me in trouble. So, well, Tracy, can you please tell us about your resource?
So it's Harbor House Domestic and Sexual Violence Program, and we serve all victims of domestic and sexual violence.
Can you share with us what I feel like the term domestic violence is used often? What does that all encompass?
Well, that's actually, I think, one of the biggest barriers that we have with this issue and with this crime, and that is that people don't really understand what it is. We think we know what it is, and what we think is that it's the violent part, it's the physical violence. But there is so many other things and so many other tactics, and there's a cycle that happens within the relationship. And so it is everything from yelling, screaming, swearing, calling people names, degrading them, demeaning them, isolation, making them feel like they have to choose being with their partner over anybody else in their life, their family, their friends, where they go, their hobbies. Their world becomes very, very, very small. And it's just about that relationship and about that person. And then they use finance. You know, I don't think a lot of people realize how really financial abuse, how daunting that is. Because it can be as extreme as not having your name on a lease, on a title, on a bank account, on a credit card. You own nothing. You have nothing. I tell people that when a victim of domestic violence is considering leaving, their life implodes one way or the other, either very violently, because the most dangerous time for a victim of domestic violence is when they're leaving, because it's about power and control, and we're taking that power and control away, or their life implodes in everything. Nothing about their life is the same. Where they live, how they live, what they drive, sometimes what they wear. Can they take their clothes with them? Can they take care of their kids? Can they feed themselves or their children? Like, their whole life is completely turned upside down, and they have no way of knowing if they are going to be able to do the basic things they need to do to take care of themselves and their children.
What does Harbor House's programming look like?
Well, that is a very broad question.
Oh, I left it broad.
Yeah, I figured. So I think what I'll do is I'll just kind of explain what happens when somebody comes in our door, right? Okay. I think one of the hardest things to do in this situation is actually walk through our threshold because we become reality. Because a lot of times with domestic violence, you are blamed for everything. Everything is your fault. You are really run down and don't feel that you have any value at all. A lot of times your children are used kind of as pawns, and if you leave, you're leaving with nothing. And so when you come through our door, because we have to make a lot of excuses because of that fear of the implosion, right? One way or the other, your life is gonna kind of go up in smoke, and nobody knows what that looks like. And so when you come through our door, we become reality. We got to take off any of those lenses that we use, I think, to help us stay and survive. And when we sit down with you and help you understand that there's financial abuse and there's isolation and there's manipulation and there's physical threats and threats about your children and the verbal and all of those things, when you realize that all of that encompasses domestic violence and not just being hit, it becomes really, really apparent what your life has been like. And we don't tell people what their life has been like. We help them see it by kind of clearing out the clouds and helping them really understand what it is and how it works by using, the cycle of violence and just kind of walking them through. I used to work with kids. In the first part of my career at Harbor House, I was a children and youth advocate. And when I would sit down with kids and a parent and I would go through the cycle of violence with them, I cannot put a number on how many kids looked at their parent and said, "How does she know that?" Because I shouldn't know. What I do know is domestic violence. And so I could literally tell them what their bad moments were like and what their days were like. So when you come in, we kind of lay all that out. And so then, one of the first things we do is make sure that your basic needs are met. Do you need water? Do you need food? Do you just need rest? You come in our building, you're safe. We're a locked facility, you're safe. And then we want to make sure that we meet your basic needs. And then when we've done that, or at least to the best of our ability, then we start talking to the person and finding out what their needs are and what brought them in and what way did they want to move forward. Did they just come in because they just need somebody to talk to? Did they want to fill out a restraining order? So we have legal advocacy. We have help with housing. We do have the advocates that also are trained with sexual violence, but we work very closely with Reach Counseling. And if there are issues with the kids, then we try to offer help with that. So then we just really spend time with people to find out what it is that they need in that moment. How do we help them get through this specific crisis moment? And then once we can help them get through that, whether that's bringing them into shelter or not, then we can move forward. And then we just try really hard to surround them with support and services and resources. And we kind of, as I tell people, we walk through the mud with them. We just stick with them as long as they want us with them. And that can be a couple days and it could be years. I worked with families sometimes for my whole time. For the 10 years I was a children and youth advocate, I worked with them the whole 10 years.
So normally what we see, the characteristic of domestic violence is mostly trauma. It's a lot of trauma, and people just don't want to talk about it, and they don't understand the layers of trauma they have, or even the telltale signs of what exactly domestic violence, which you just said that it's not about hitting, but the years of abuse of different kinds. So are you seeing mostly it's women? Because we are also seeing a rise in the case in men too. So can you just shed some light on, are you getting the most complaints from the women or the kids or men alike? Are you seeing some shifts there?
I think in the past probably seven years or more, we have seen more men. Now, when I was a children's advocate 21 years ago, I was also the advocate that worked with adult men. So we always worked with men. I know that people didn't think we did, but we did. And that was, again, everything from safe shelter. We didn't shelter them at Harbor House at the time, but that was because we were so limited in rooms. We had to put people with people. And also trauma. Because at the time, the shelter was full of women and children who primarily were abused by adult men. And so we had to, until we had more space, people had their own bathroom and their own space. But we always found safe shelter for men. I used to meet them at Harmony Cafe. I know that's but I used to meet them there. I used to meet them at coffee shops. If they wanted to come into Harbor House, that was great. But a lot of them didn't want to, and I think it was just the
stigma.
Yeah, I think it was the stigma of a male coming in because most people thought we were women's shelter. We always served men, and we always have more children than we do adults, right? So, yes, we're seeing it more now because I think so. Like any given time, we have men in shelter. I mean, at any given time, we have probably two to five, and there's been men with children that come in. I think I think more reporting. That makes sense. But I think also more women are reporting. I think the more we educate and the more we raise awareness in our community and really help people understand really what it is and that, you know what, you deserve to be safe and happy and you can't be in that mess. I think that's creates the more people that come in. And we have seen a rise in men coming in.
So when we talk about Harbor House, so far what we've kind of addressed was what's some of the definitions or what might be considered domestic violence and then some of the programming, but it's actually a place too, legitimately. Can you share a little bit about your facilities?
Yeah, so our main facility, we have actually 3 offices.
Oh, I didn't.
We have an outreach office in Chilton because our rural community is Calumet County, or our rural county. And so that's our coverage area. Doesn't mean we only serve people from them there, but that's our main responsibility, right? Is that Outagamie and Calumet County. And so our main facility is where 90% of us are kind of held. We are technically a 68-bed facility, shelter. So I believe we're either the second or the third largest in the state of Wisconsin. And I can tell you that since March, we have been somewhere between 70 and 85 people. So I have had to buy cots, and we have had to turn programming rooms into bedrooms.
So you are basically 100% full.
We are.
And you have been, it sounds like it, 100% full.
We have. Yeah. Since last November, we have been full. Very, I would say somewhere between 62 to 68 or 70. And then since March. And then the other thing that we have realized is that our stays are longer. So our clients have to stay longer. Now, part of that thing, I feel it's because we're serving better, my opinion. I think we're doing a really good job. But also there's nowhere to go. Like there's no affordable housing. We get, the community expects us to get people ready to leave, not understanding that
they need a place to leave to.
They need a place to leave to,
yeah.
Right? And so that is difficult. And what's their option? Their option's going back, usually, because they don't have anywhere to go. So affordable housing is a huge issue. And so we have the shelter program, and then there's 6 apartments that are attached to our building that are transitional housing. We partner with Pillars. So they manage those apartments, but our clients transition back there and then stay in those. And then we run our children's program, our sexual violence program, our legal. We have all our adult advocates. We have a community education coordinator that goes out into the community and does trainings and speakings. And we have a prevention education manager who goes into the schools from grade 1 to grade 12 and then also helps with the kids, because a lot of kids actually disclose in the classroom, right, after they hear somebody talk. So we have somebody who's out in Calumet County. And then we also have, I believe we are the only victim service program in the state that offers services to offenders, to the offender family member, because they are family members. And it was interesting because I became a trainer for the DOJ for abuse later in life, elder abuse. And so I do trainings for them. And one of the things that I really took away from that training was how much the older abuse victim really wants their offending family member to get help, not just punished. And so we changed our services because of that. And so now we do assessments, I think, for 5 counties. So when somebody's arrested for domestic violence, they have to come through and get an assessment. And then we turn around and actually offer services also. So we tried to kind of mirror a little bit, accountability, but also helping people understand that probably the majority of them were child victims because of that childhood trauma, right? And, we also have to understand that they stay a family member, right? So, or they move on and create another family. And so we want to make sure that we're trying to give them resources and help them with dealing things a little bit better. And I think sometimes I believe that once we connect the dots with why we're reacting the way we're reacting because of something that happened in our past, I think sometimes that helps us.
I think that's the main thing, that it just stays. What happens in your childhood always remains with you, and it has to be unlearned, and that unlearning process is never easy. So October is a domestic abuse awareness month. So is there any signature event coming up to, make more awareness in the community?
Well, we are trying. I was at the district attorney's office and at the courthouse last week, and there was three of the stations, the media stations there, talking about the red silhouettes and what they represent. And we were talking about the Safe at Home program. And then yesterday, the Attorney General was at a Harbor House and doing a press conference. We have an event at the end of the month called Comedy for a Cause. And that actually, we used to have an event when I first started back in 2005, 2006, and it was called A Time to Laugh. And it was kind of the brainchild of one of our board members. Her name is Shan Kennedy, and I think it started because she was in a group, like a support group, and she heard somebody speak, and she just felt that like we needed to have a reason to kind of celebrate and laugh. And so we started this really kind of big event where we brought in a comedian and then had a dinner and, fun. It was a fundraiser, right? And so we had our 40th anniversary last year, and we had a big event. And then
That was an awesome event because I was there.
thank you for coming. I appreciate that. It was a dual thing for me. It was celebrating and having a rich understanding of Harbor House's 40 years, but also honoring 2 of the people that built Harbor House, which is Beth Schnorr and Wendy Gale. And so they kind of left during COVID, and I just felt that they deserved a lot more. And so, but we had that, and then we had to have something this year, right? And so we're doing that again. We're bringing back comedians, but they're turning it actually into a Halloween thing. So everybody's going to be in costumes, and it's sold out. I was shocked. It was awesome. But when they first I wanted the comedian thing back, but when they said it was going to be Halloween, I'm like, it's already sold out, which is kind of.
Oh, you can't mess with that.
Right.
You gotta leave that alone.
Right. Yeah.
So I've had an opportunity to meet members of your team who are amazing. And I've also had an opportunity to tour the facility here in Appleton. And there is such a thoughtfulness that has gone into some of the things that are provided to the individuals that use the services. And one of the things that I particularly remember is if you needed to bring your pet, which isn't something everybody can would even think of, but that's your partner in crime often, right? That's
right.
You don't
Your
want
family member.
It's a family member. You don't want to leave your pet behind. And so I kind of just want to ask, A, how big is your team, your amazing team? And then B, what are some of those thoughtful things that have been put in place? Because I think I want the Appleton Engaged listener to understand, there's a lot of thoughtfulness that has gone into not only the environment and the services and the programming, it's just all thoughtful and helpful in trying to help people get on track, get back on track, however you want to phrase that.
Yeah. I mean, we started actually taking pets before we had a space for them. And one of the things that we knew, and it's based on their studies out there, that one of the first family members that start being physically abused and threatened that way are the pets, because they mean the most to the kids and the partner. And so, and I specifically remember we had this older woman who would come in, and she was so scared, and we wanted her. I would be sitting across the table from her, and her partner would be on the phone, and he would just be screaming at her to come home and stuff like that. And he would always threaten to kill her cat if she didn't go home. And so she always went home. And it was, I think, around that time that Beth just said, that's it, we got to figure something out. And we didn't have like a climate control, so there was only certain times a year we could do it and stuff like that. But as soon as we did the renovation, we made sure that there's a cat room that can hold cats, but we also partnered with Humane Society to make sure that we were trained and really understood pet trauma and trauma, to the animals in the family. And then we cross-trained them, right? And then we have a dog kennel with a little backyard with a dog run. And the residents have full access to that. And then there are 2 rooms on each floor that are pet-friendly, so they can keep the pet in there. We can't do all of them because of allergies, but we do. I think another thing that we have, we just actually, at our 40th, we created a calming corner. And it was for kids with high anxiety and sensory issues. And so it's just this kind of corner. It's got half walls. We put one of those bowed mirrors up, and it just has stuff on the walls and a lot of soft beanbag chairs and fidgety stuff and books and stuff like that, just so that the smaller kids have a place of their own just to fidget or calm when their anxiety's really up. So we put that in. We put a playroom right off of the family kitchen so that moms could cook and the kids could have something to do. Actually, we just put a TV in there, which, wow, that has created some really good. It was just such a good idea. I don't know why we waited so long to do that. We also dedicated a community resource room for our 40th, and that's the Beth Schnorr. That's Beth Schnorr Community Resource Room, and then Wendy Gale's the Calming Corner. Wendy was our first children's advocate 40 years ago when we started. And so that room is dedicated just for community partners so that anybody can come in and work with our clients or their clients. And so they have that space. They can hold small groups if they want to. They can do one-on-ones. They can help with paperwork. They can do whatever they need to do. There's a community space for community partners to use. We put in extra spaces up on both floors, and we have little kind of cubby areas, and we turn them into our office manager and accountant actually just like sees something like that, and she's like, well, we got to do this, and she turns it into this nice little sitting area. But most of it is for kids or moms with younger kids and stuff like that, just so they have something. And the other thing, that we did was we have a couple of meeting rooms when you come through our security door into the shelter area and you come in for like an appointment or you're a walk-in in crisis. We have a couple rooms, and we put day beds in there so that even if someone maybe Harbor House isn't really where is the right place for them, we can at least help them temporarily with meeting their basic needs: rest, food, water. They can take a shower, they can clean up, we can give them some presents and some time. So there's a lot of things. We have an art room for the kids and parents, and then we also have an area we have 2 huge, it's like a big rectangle area, big couches, sectional couches for us. And we just kind of have that space so we can sit down and have coffee, or we can laugh, or we can try to come up with ways to help people. so many times we have to think outside the box.
Tracy, first of all, it's so nice to hear that when we talk about safe and secure environment, normally we think about, okay, protecting them from the person who has been abusing them. But it's also about giving a sense of normalcy to them, that not everything is lost. You can still cook food for your kids. You can still watch a TV together, can have a family time. And I think that's fascinating to see that, every time you learn from an incident, you're trying to upgrade the facility to make sure that, those, needs are taken care of. So I would love to learn about any narrative or a story that has always stayed with you. It could be a positive reflection of anything Harbor House did to a family, and today you feel good when you see that community member today that, you know what, she or he took a help on that day, and I'm glad he or she's in a better space today.
I think for me, it goes back to my time as a children's advocate. And, I tell people when I train them or just when I'm talking, because I just walk around and talk to people, that we change and save lives in big and little ways every single day with everything we do. And it could be as simple as walking down a hallway and seeing a child and saying, hey, I like your jammies, but giving them that moment, right? Or something really big, like helping somebody get housing or helping, we celebrate when somebody gets housing and they're moving our show. We celebrate, right? I mean, I see the advocates get together in our living room and, applaud and that sort of thing. Like, we really try to celebrate those big wins with our clients. But for me, there was a couple of teenagers that I worked with, and I think about them all the time, even though it was 15 years ago. And both of them were at a point where I didn't know if they would make it out of high school, like either alive or just the sheer trauma of, in our world, what that complex chronic trauma does is steamrolls us either into mental health, into criminal behavior, or into AODA issues. And like there's like 3 tunnels, and without intervention, which is what we're all here for, right? Is to provide that and try to help that. And I know I don't have to question. I know if these kids wouldn't have gotten the intervention, they would not be living the lives that are living today. And so, one was failing in school, not taking care of themselves hygiene-wise, no friends, and just so angry. And once we were able to limit the time with the abusive parent, and that took everybody, by the way, you started to see that person start to thrive. And within 1 year went to straight A's, solo ensemble, lots of friends, working 2 jobs, went to college, went and got master's degree. And now, and one of them actually in their letter that they have to write to go into the master's program actually mentioned myself and the guardian item, and now is thriving and helping kids.
That
so
is amazing.
Yeah, and so that always sticks with me, and that's fortunately one of many that I have, because quite a few of the families, for me at least, send me Christmas cards or stuff like that, even though they haven't talked to me in probably 15 years.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, that's nice. Okay. I'm going to ask 2 questions.
Okay.
One is a follow-up question from earlier, and then I'm going to connect this other question onto it. A, how big is your team? And then, is there anything the community can do to be helpful?
Okay, so we have a staff of 35, and so that's including full-time and part-time employees, and they are amazing. And there is not one of them that doesn't have such a great passion for what we do, and they're in it for the right reason, and they go the extra mile for the clients, and they go most times the extra mile for each other. I mean, it's really, there were times when I walked into Harbor House, I couldn't breathe, and now I walk in and I just take a deep breath every time I go in there, because the environment is so good. And so the team, people are in the right place and they have the support they need, and they just do amazing. Like I said, they change and save lives in big and little ways every day. And I'm so proud of all of them.
So two of my questions now comes because it's such an interesting conversation, Tracy, and you're opening so many nuances to it. One is how your team deals with all these trauma cases, because it's also a personal trauma too. When you see somebody in pain, as you just said, you can't breathe when you see them in that pain, and even sometimes not realizing that victim doesn't understand that what is being done to them is not normal. So how do you your team train themselves to like compartmentalize that pain and then offer help? And second, I would love to know: is there a charge to coming to Harvard? How is it a pay? Sometimes people just don't know whether they have to make a payment to go there, or it's something like done by the PD. They are brought to the house, Harbor House. Does that work?
Yeah. So there is no charge for anything, right? So everything at Harbor House is a service, right? We provide services. So there's nothing for that. And you can come in anyway. Yes, the police bring people, like I said, I was speaking to Timber before, and I said, after 5 o'clock when everybody else goes home for the night, everybody's trauma ends up at Harbor House, right? At the end of the day. And, the hospitals want to release people and they got nowhere to go, they call Harbor House. And we do deal with a lot of, we know that domestic violence is a driving force to mental health. So we have a house full of mental health. And we also know that AODA is a coping method. And so we have a house full of people either needing to use or in recovery. And we have a lot of chronic homelessness, and so, which unfortunately, domestic violence is a driving force for all of three of those things. So there's no charge. And, there is a lot of secondary trauma. And what I try to encourage everyone to do is what I used to do when I was doing the direct service, and that is go to a coworker's office and shut the door and be with that coworker. Or if you feel that you are tapped, then you go to your supervisor and say, I need a break. And then you go home and you go take care of yourself. It is so crucial that the people that do our work take care of themselves first. It's like that airplane thing, right? They tell us to put our oxygen mask on before we can help children. To me, it's the same thing, right? And so, I send people home. Like, I just be like, how are you doing today? Do you need to be here? It's okay if you need that moment, but also make sure that all of our doors are open for you to come through if you need it. And a lot of times we end up in that sectional, right? Sitting on those couches and kind of, because we do walk the journey with everybody, right? We walk the journey, we feel what they feel. And, when you are empathetic and compassionate and wanting to help, it goes with what we do. I don't think I finished answering your question.
Well, maybe.
Okay. Good.
Well, we covered. Well, you definitely answered how big your team is, right? And then, I wanted to know, what can the community do to be helpful? And maybe we didn't directly answer that. So what can the community do to be helpful?
Well, volunteering is always encouraged. We can't do what we do without our volunteers. And what they do to help us allows us to do what we were just talking about, which is actually being with somebody and walking the journey with them. And so, your time and or raising awareness, right? Talking about it. The more we talk about it, the less hidden it is. And the more we talk about it, the more people understand what it really is versus what everybody has historically thought about it. And just always supporting Harbor House, which I'm so thankful, as a community has always done. Certainly, financially, with the cuts, which are devastating for all of the nonprofits, especially the service-providing nonprofits right now. Budget cuts are devastating to all of us, and extra right now to Harbor House.
Who can people contact if they'd like to learn more?
So you can go to our website. You can follow us on our social media because we do post a lot and a lot of educational things. Otherwise, you reach out to us personally. You can reach out to me personally. You can call Harbor. I'm the only Tracy there. And you can call and leave me a message. You can email, which is always better because I'm not in the office that often. You can contact Jen Helms, who is our community education coordinator. So she works out in the community. Michelle Rule is our director of program services. Laura Radine is our volunteer coordinator, who is awesome. So, but really, if you just call our main line, any advocate should be able to help you. Because we don't just take crisis calls.
Right.
We take any calls.
And it sounds like if you want to call and maybe get a presentation, that's a thing.
That's a big thing, you bet.
You know,
Yep.
some training, that sounds like that's a thing.
Yes, and for anyone. And, we train one person and I've trained 200 people. So, yeah.
So, Tracy, you told us about your amazing team. Now it's time to give them a shout out.
Well, yeah. Like I said, they just do such amazing things. And for me, the best moment is when I'm walking in the hallways and I hear them laughing. Like, that's a big thing for me, especially in such a heavy place. Or when they are all gathered together trying to help one advocate try to be more creative and work outside the box to really help a family or an individual, and just celebrating those big wins. And they just show up every day to serve, and it's amazing. I'm so proud of them, and I'm so proud to still work at Harbor House.
Tracy, is there any additional information that you would like to share with the Appleton Engaged listener that maybe we didn't ask a question about?
I thought so, but I don't now because I talked about, for me, the two biggest barriers that we have with domestic violence is people's not understanding what it is and not knowing what all Harbor House does. Like, they just think we're a shelter and for women and children. And we have this kind of historic idea of what domestic violence is. And I think if we can help our community understand those two things better, we'll be way better off. And also really understanding, too, our domestic violence intervention program, which works with offenders. I think it's very unique. They do an amazing job. Both Jess and Lori have been doing it for 17 years. We work very closely with district attorney's office, with probation and parole, but we also work with counselors, and they just do such an amazing thing. They do small support groups instead of throwing everybody in one big group, and really make it more intimate and connecting for the men and women in the groups. And to me, that's where we start with reducing acts of domestic violence is that group.
At this time, Tracy, we want to take a quick moment and say thank you for spending time with us here on Appleton Engaged.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Appleton Engaged listeners, thank you for spending time with us. Thank you for giving us your minds and ears. Thank you for caring about another amazing resource in our city, helping to make a huge difference, helping to serve those in need in our community. The work that they do over at Harbor House, I can't stress the importance of that. And we are so lucky to have such a resource located right here in Appleton. Appleton Engaged listeners, you already know what our goal is here, and that is this. We are trying to become the #1 podcast in Northeast Wisconsin, and we need your help. And what that help looks like, as you are listening to these episodes and you're thinking, Timber and Andy, you should have asked this, you should let us know. If you're thinking, I think I should be a guest, or I got a guest I would like to recommend, you should let us know. And the way you can let us know is by reaching out to us at belonging@appletonwi.gov. Once again, that is belonging@appletonwi.gov. And then also, we think that an informed community is a strong community, and we think one of the ways to inform our community is by getting more eyes and ears listening to this amazing resource known as the Appleton Engaged podcast. And we do that through analytics. So as you're listening, if you see the button that says subscribe, do it. If you see the opportunity to give us stars, give us 5. And if you would take the time and write us a review. These are all the things that increase our analytics, and the better our analytics, the more eyes and ears and community members get to engage and learn about this amazing resource known as Appleton Engaged Podcast.
Thank you, Tracy, and your team at Harbor House. We are so fortunate to have you here. And it's all about building that community and showing up for each other and providing the safety to the most vulnerable. So please, Appleton Engaged listeners, if you are listening to us and if you know someone who needs support, visit harborhousewisconsin.wi.org. Is that correct, Tracy?
Yes.
Or stop by 720 West 5th Street in Appleton, and maybe you can help another person who needs it. Until next time, stay thoughtful, stay curious, and stay engaged.